Welcome, brave listeners. Tonight, the shadows of the past and present intertwine. This evening, we bring you two haunting tales that show how ghostly encounters can be even more terrifying when you're already living in a dysfunctional household or going through a breakup. Imagine the chilling fear of facing spirits from beyond, while also navigating the chaos of a troubled family or the heartache of lost love. Join us as we explore these eerie stories that will leave you questioning reality and feeling the chill of the unknown. Get ready for a journey into the dark corners of human experience, where the supernatural meets the all-too-real struggles of everyday life. Story 1: The Haunted Toy. Breakups are tough. Each day feels like a monotonous cycle of despair, and I'm struggling to find a way out. My good friend recently invited me to Colombia, saying I needed to shake things up and get away from the place that's been suffocating me. I'm a bit nervous. Colombia has a reputation for being dangerous, but the idea of an adventure that could distract me from my heartbreak is tempting. Dating again seems daunting, and I'm afraid to bring someone into my darkness. I feel defeated and useless, but maybe it's time to push through. In the midst of this emotional turmoil, I'm reminded of a chilling experience from my childhood. It's a memory that resurfaces every time I feel vulnerable and lost. It's a story that still gives me goosebumps. Back in 1998, both of my dad's parents passed away in our house, downstairs. The sorrow of their loss lingered in our home, a palpable presence that we tried to ignore. Among my toys was a talking Ernie doll. At least, I think it was Ernie, though it might have been Bert. This doll had a habit of saying things at night, which creeped me out. Eventually, my parents took it and placed it in the corner of their room, hoping to silence it. One night, about a year after my grandfather's death, my parents were talking in their room. My dad, overwhelmed with grief, began to reminisce. "Ugh, I wonder how he's doing. I miss him," he said, his voice cracking with emotion. The room was filled with an eerie silence that seemed to stretch on forever. Then, out of nowhere, the long, silent Ernie doll broke the silence. It hadn't uttered a word in over a year, but now it spoke with unsettling clarity. "I feel great," it exclaimed. The voice, though mechanical, seemed to carry an unnatural weight, as if it were conveying a message from beyond the grave. Both of my parents broke down in tears, unable to comprehend what had just happened. They were convinced it was my grandfather communicating with them, letting them know he was at peace. The doll's sudden outburst was too perfectly timed to be a coincidence. I remember my dad telling me this story years later, his eyes filled with a mixture of awe and fear. He described the goosebumps that ran down his arms, the way the room seemed to grow colder, and the sense of presence that lingered even after the doll had fallen silent. It was as if the boundaries between the living and the dead had briefly blurred, allowing my grandfather's spirit to reassure his grieving son. The memory of that night has stayed with me, a haunting reminder of the mysteries that lie just beyond our understanding. As I contemplate my own struggles, I can't help but draw parallels between my father's grief and my own. We both faced moments of darkness, punctuated by brief, inexplicable glimpses of light. The invitation to Colombia looms large in my mind. It promises a break from the endless cycle of sorrow, a chance to rediscover myself in a new and exciting environment. But the fear of the unknown holds me back, just as the fear of the talking doll once did. Maybe it's time to take a leap of faith, to embrace the uncertainty and the potential for something new and beautiful. My friend's words echo in my mind. You need to get out of where you're at. This will shake things up. Perhaps she's right. Perhaps it's time to leave behind the ghosts of my past and step into the unknown, hoping to find a fresh start. As I pack my bags for Colombia, I'm filled with a mix of fear and hope. The journey ahead is uncertain, but I'm ready to face it. Just as my father found comfort in a message from beyond, I'm searching for my own signs, my own moments of clarity that will guide me through this dark period. And who knows, maybe the haunted toy's eerie proclamation was a reminder that, despite the shadows, there's always a chance to feel great again. Story 2: Shadows of the Past. My childhood was a whirlwind of chaos and confusion. Our house was always filled with tension and drama. My mom hated my grandma, and I never understood why. I adored my grandma, a chain smoker who was perpetually sipping coffee. She'd try to make me believe she could blow smoke out of her ears when she inhaled her cigarettes. My brother was a drug addict who got kicked out of multiple high schools, and my dad was super judgmental, while my mom was a bit erratic. Amidst all this, my grandma's house was both a refuge and a source of terror. When I was younger, I lived with my grandma for a while. Her house was, to say the least, spooky as hell. We would hear noises at all hours of the night, and not just the house creaking kind of noises. It was more like people talking in hushed voices in odd rooms in the house. We heard dogs barking in the basement, which was especially unnerving since we didn't have any dogs at the time. One night stands out more than the others. It was late, probably around midnight, and I needed to use the bathroom. The bathroom mirror faced our dining area, so walking into the bathroom, I naturally looked into the mirror. What I saw sent chills down my spine. Reflected in the mirror was a figure standing at our dining room table. The person was dressed in old clothes, with long white hair and a very dressy type of suit. I turned around to look directly at the dining room, but there was nothing there. Needless to say, I decided to sleep in the bathroom that night because, frankly, fuck that shit. That house was full of inexplicable occurrences. My grandma always shrugged them off, as if the ghosts were old friends. She'd chuckle and say, "Oh, it's just the house settling," or "That's just Mr. Smith from the attic." I never knew if she was serious or just trying to keep me from being scared. But there was nothing comforting about seeing a ghostly figure in the middle of the night. The tension between my mom and grandma was another ghost of sorts, haunting the household. My mom's erratic behavior made everything worse. She would fly off the handle at the slightest provocation, especially when it came to grandma. My dad would judge and criticize, adding fuel to the fire. In the midst of this familial war zone, my brother's drug addiction was a ticking time bomb, leading to violent outbursts and expulsions from school. I often felt like I was walking on eggshells, trying to avoid triggering another explosion. One day I asked my mom why she hated grandma so much. She looked at me with a mix of anger and sadness and simply said, "You wouldn't understand." And maybe she was right. I couldn't understand the bitterness and resentment that clouded their relationship. All I knew was that my grandma, despite her quirks and the eerie happenings in her house, was the most stable figure in my life. Even now, I can't shake the memory of that ghostly figure at the dining room table. It's like a dark shadow lingering in the corners of my mind. I often wonder who it was and what they wanted. Was it a residual haunting, a spirit replaying a moment from its life? Or was it something more sinister, drawn to the turmoil and chaos of our household? Reflecting on those times, I realized that the real horror wasn't just the paranormal activity in Grandma's house. It was the emotional turbulence, the constant fear of what would happen next, and the feeling of being trapped in a never-ending nightmare. Grandma's house, with its ghosts and mysteries, was a physical manifestation of the invisible spirits that haunted my family. Unresolved anger, addiction, and deep-seated resentment. These days, I'm trying to move past those dark memories, but it's not easy. Each day feels the same, filled with the weight of the past. I'm afraid to start dating again, scared of dragging someone else into my darkness. But maybe, like facing the ghosts of my childhood, it's something I need to confront to find peace. And who knows, perhaps in facing these fears, I can finally lay the past to rest.